Beyond the Mic with Sean Dillon.
We're joined on the Starline by a talented author, journalist who has covered technology, Asia's economy, the Great Recession, Brexit, and so much more. He's reported from nearly 40 countries. How does the wealthiest countries on earth run out of everything? You'll find out in How the World Ran Out of Everything. His book is the latest from author Peter S. Goodman.
Thanks very much for having me.
Peter, let's go beyond the mic. Trillions of dollars of products were caught up in the global pandemic traffic jam. Was the supply chain that vulnerable to begin with? And how can the world not be subject to those failures again?
Yeah, look, the supply chain is a modern miracle, and most of the time it works incredibly well. You can click on, some Amazon button, wait sometimes just a few hours, and a package shows up at your door. But for years, there have been vulnerabilities that we've seen every time there's any kind of shock. I mean, I wrote my first supply chain shock story way back in 1999 when there was an earthquake in Taiwan. There was a computer chip shortage. Of course, the Fukushima nuclear disaster in Japan in 2011. We saw lots of shortages of electronic components for years after, and people arguing that we had to think more about resilience in the supply chain. But we kept on concentrating more and more production in low-cost places, especially China. And as a result of that, when the pandemic hit, we had very low inventories and we were hugely dependent upon a single country for things like personal protective gear in the middle of a public health emergency. And that was a shock to the system that should have gotten us thinking about new ways to configure globalization.
How did the 1998 deregulation of shipping assist in congestion even today?
Well, that's a key reform. We're at the mercy really of this international cartel. There's three alliances, think like airline alliances, that dominate trade across the Pacific. And in 98, Congress essentially took instruction from big box retailers and they freed the shipping companies from the requirement that they be transparent about their prices. They give you one price, they got to give me the same price. It's not a price cap. It's not set by the government. It's set by the market, but it's got to be a transparent price. And they did away with that. And that allowed giant companies, eventually Amazon, at that time Walmart, Target, to negotiate sweetheart deals with the shipping companies and left everybody else in a position where they just had to pay whatever they had to pay on a spot market. And that was fine as long as shipping was proceeding normally. Once there's a shock, during the pandemic, we saw the price of moving a shipping container from Shanghai in China across the Pacific to the ports of Los Angeles and Long Beach. That's the gateway for 40% of imported goods reaching the United States by container. That goes up from about $2,000 to $28,000 if you throw in all the fees and special handling charges in the space of a few months. This is a major reason we're grappling with inflation.
Peter, corporations have increased profits across the board for goods with cost of goods increasing. Or is it just larger profits for them?
Well, it's both. But the thing is, there's so little transparency and there's so little competition in many industries that we really don't know. What we know is that when there's a supply chain disruption, take beef, right? We got 4 meat packers that are in control of 85% of the American market for slaughterhouse capacity. It's a number that would make the robber barons blush, right? So during the worst of the pandemic, we know there are shortages on supermarket shelves. We know ranchers are going out of business and are selling, multi-generational ranches off to developers because they just can't make a go of it anymore. And the meat packers are celebrating record profits. So that's an example clearly of the benefits going to one narrow set of hands. At the same time, by the way, we're asking slaughterhouse workers to keep laboring in the midst of super spreader events at slaughterhouses, while claiming via an executive order from the federal government that this is required so that we can feed Americans. At the time, these meat packers are actually increasing their exports of frozen products around the world. We basically sacrifice the lives of slaughterhouse workers to funnel monopoly profits to giant companies.
How the World Ran Out of Everything is the book. Author Peter S. Goodman joins us beyond the mic for The Rock You Need. Peter, all this is 8 random questions. Answer with the first thing that comes to your mind. There's no pressure.
Okay.
Where's your favorite place to eat when you were based in Shanghai?
Oh, wow. That's a hard one. There was a Japanese place called Shintori that I loved.
Time for the hardest question of the Rocky Nate. It's a yes, no, or maybe. Will Great Britain rejoin the EU in the next 5 years?
Next 5 years? No.
How about next 10?
Maybe.
What's your favorite memory of your time at Reed College?
Going to the Oregon coast as part of the West Wind weekend.
After your time living in Alaska, do you still enjoy salmon and crab?
Not as much as I did, because you just can't beat that salmon up there. There's nothing like it.
Who is the best New York Mets pitcher you've ever seen live?
Oh, it's an easy one. Tom Seaver. Greatest of all time.
Oh, he was amazing. Second best movie after The Big Lebowski is?
I like Michael Clayton.
Good choice. What's the last concert you've seen live?
Stevie Wonder at the Barclays Center in Brooklyn.
Peter, which coworker of yours deserves more credit than they're getting right now?
Ken Belson.
Why?
Greatest, dominates the money and sports beat, has broken every story any of you guys have ever heard about the NFL.
It's time for two big questions with the author of How the World Ran Out of Everything, Peter S. Goodman, Beyond Mike. What is the one unfounded fear of AI?
Unfounded fear. Interesting. I mean, I think we overdo it with the job losses net because technology tends to create jobs as well as destroy jobs. But the fear is real because we don't do a good job of cushioning people who lose jobs in the United States.
What's your biggest fear you have about the future shortages of goods, intentional or unintentional, from China?
Yeah, I mean, that's horrible. My wife can't get her asthma medicine. That's anybody who's sitting around waiting for a medical device because they need a chip that probably actually comes from Taiwan, but there are components that come from China as well. This is a serious emergency.
We've got some bonus time, so let's sneak in a couple more. How has researching this changed the way that you look at the supply chain?
Well, I didn't realize the extent to which financial incentives are driving us to places that are just absurd. I mean, I found an engineer at Union Pacific Railroad who was telling me that he was appalled to discover he's pulling cars in the wrong direction because Wall Street wants to lower so-called dwell time. That's the amount of time cargo sits in any given place. So some guy at a freight yard in Nebraska is like, whatever the next train is, I'm sticking these cars on that train because then I can tell the bosses that I've lowered dwell time. I don't care where this stuff is going. That's just bananas.
So what's the next topic you want to tackle?
I'm super interested in whether this green energy transition is actually an economic opportunity. I mean, there's a lot of fear. I spent time in Michigan earlier this year talking to UAW workers who were worried that the EV transition is going to cost them their jobs. And they're not crazy because, again, we haven't done a good job helping people who've lost jobs in places like Michigan. But if we do it right, this should be a net positive. There should be a lot of increased jobs.
He loves Shintormi in Shanghai, the Oregon coast, and wants you to read his book, How the World Ran Out of Everything. Peter S. Goodman, thanks so much for taking the time to talk with us today.
Thanks so much. This was fun.
We'll always appreciate a review on Apple or Spotify and encourage you to listen to other episodes at beyondthemic.com. And that, my friends, is a Beyond the Mic shortcut. If you're enjoying these conversations, please check out another Beyond the Mic episode to find more actors, artists, and people you need to know. We'd also appreciate a like and subscribe on the Good Pods app.